Ejike is suffering because of the bad things he did to his parents, which Dan contributed over 80% to. I wish they could see through this Dan and his evil plans. It turns out that Dan even did more evil things than what we are already seeing. We will get to find out on this episode. Sometimes it's better we keep our secret to ourselves because the people we call our friends sometimes end up to become our worst enemy. After what happened in the last episode that Munachi was crying, she don't know where to go and get 100 million naira to bail the husband from the kidnapper's hand. On this episode, it turns out that they were really serious. Munachi has been running around with the other friends to look for money so that Ejike can come back. But the question is, how are they going to get 100 million naira? Munachi just lost her job. She's not even working right now. Where is she going to get the money from? But then Andy came out to tell Munachi not to cry, that everything will be fine. But the question is, how is everything going to be fine when they cannot raise the money? But Munachi kept on crying that the only money that she has is 5 million naira. I'm even surprised that Munachi still have up to 5 million naira. But then Andy told Munachi that he can raise 10 million naira and he can speak to some few friends where he can get another 10 million naira to make it 20 million naira. So then they were already having 25 million naira. Rita supported with 5 million naira. Munachi's mother also supported with 10 million naira. But then the shocking thing is that Dan came out to tell them that he invested money in a business that right now he does not have money to support. This is quite unfortunate. Dan has always been milking from Ejike and he is not ready to stop until he finally destroys Ejike completely. Dan is behind everything. That is why he doesn't want to give anything to these people to bring back Ejike. And Dan went on to tell them that him and his humble family will support with 200,000. Now, these people are looking for 100 million naira and they have already been able to raise 40 million. Why can't Dan give them some money? Why is Dan doing this to Munachi and Ejike? The painful part of this whole thing is that Ejike has been a good friend to Dan right from the beginning, supporting him anytime he needs his help. So Dan doing this to Ejike is not even the best. Andy told Dan that he is very, very disappointed at Dan for doing this because, why would Dan do such a thing? How can't you support Ejike now that he needs your help? Even though you are the mastermind behind everything that is happening to Ejike, you can also redeem yourself by also contributing a huge amount of money so that nobody will suspect you. But then you're already suspected. Ejike is still in the hands of the kidnappers, suffering and being tortured by these people. They have been asking for these millions from Ejike, but Ejike is begging them that the family cannot raise this money, that he does not have 100 million naira. Right now, he is passing through a lot in his business. He cannot raise 100 million naira. And the kidnappers were telling Ejike that your family will provide that money. Besides, you have the money. That we know that you want to borrow money from the bank. So where is the money? Where is the money? This is what will make Ejike to finally believe that Dan is the one behind everything that has happened to him. Because Dan is the engineer of the kidnapping of Courage. Because how did the kidnappers got to know that Courage was about to borrow money from the bank? Dan was the only person he discussed this whole thing with. Dan does not know what he has gotten himself into. Ejike was still begging the kidnappers to let him go, that the family cannot be able to raise this kind of money. But then he told the kidnappers that he was supposed to get that money from the bank, but he changed his mind that he cannot use his house as collateral for him to get that money. So that is why he doesn't have the money. And the kidnapper said, if you don't have the money, then your family will bring the money. And if your family cannot raise the money, you have to die because they are definitely going to kill you. The only time that Ejike could listen to Munachi's advice when he called Munachi and told her that he's going to use the house as collateral, Munachi told Ejike not to do that. Even when Ejike was insisting that this is business and that Munachi does not know anything about business, Ejike still listening to Munachi's advice. But the unfortunate thing is that Dan still had to beat him to his own game. Dan already has positioned his men to deal with him and torture him so that he will still bring the money. Even when he doesn't have it, he can still go ahead and sell his house to raise the money. It is so unfortunate that the people we call our best friends can be our worst enemy. And Dan came to the kitchen to wash his hands when Chinwe was there trying to prepare something for them to eat. But then Chinwe turned and looked at Dan and saw the mark. That mark reminded her of what happened to her when Ejike chased her out. Remember that some men took Munachi to a place that they forced themselves on women and make them to give birth so that they can sell the children to make money. Chinwe now discovered that Dan is one of the people that were doing that evil work. From the look of things, Dan can possibly be the father of Chinwe's daughter. But the question is, if Dan was supposed to be part of this whole thing, then he would have recognized Chinwe by now. When Dan was about to leave, Chinwe now mentioned something that happens in where they held her captive. And Dan immediately turned and asked Chinwe, "What did you say?" And Chinwe was so terrified because she already know that Dan is a bad person. Right now, Chinwe has been crying and saying that Dan is the one. So he's actually the one behind this whole thing. Now I see the reason why Dan is like this. He has been an evil person right from time. But then they still sat down on the round table thinking of what to do to raise the remaining part of the money so that they can go ahead and pay for AGK to come back. Remember that AGK need to leave for him to decide or need to leave to tell his own story. According to Andy, Dan came up with the suggestion that they should go ahead and sell the house for them to be able to raise this money. Now, this is what Dan has always wanted, for AGK to lose his house and lose everything that he has for him to be satisfied. That is just Dan is here just to destroy AGK completely. But then Andy was not in support of this whole thing. Because why should they sell the house? They don't need to sell this house. This is the only thing AGK has for now because he has lost a lot. And Munachi cannot now pack herself to the mother's house when she's already married. This is her house. But at this point, we already know how much Munachi loves AGK, and she's willing to do anything, anything, to bring back the husband. So I think Munachi is going to give in to the idea of selling the house. They don't have any other way of raising the money. And besides, time is already going. These kidnappers are not ready to play with them at all. But then, Munachi's mother now told Munachi that she is the only one that can make this decision and no one else. So if Munachi is ready to sell this house to raise money to bring back the husband, then so be it. That they don't have any option. Even if Chinwe have the mind to help the brother, Chinwe doesn't have money. And even if you sell herself, according to her, the uncle and the auntie, they won't be able to raise up to 10 million naira for them to add to bring back AGK. But now, what is Munachi going to do? And Munachi went ahead to tell them that she is ready. That if Choma does not have anything reasonable to say, she should just go ahead and keep quiet. That she's ready to do anything to bring back the husband. But then Chinwe has been terrified ever since she saw the mark on Dan's hand, knowing that Dan is one of the bad people that kidnapped her the last time and got her pregnant. She has been terrified. But then Andy walked up to Chinwe and asked her what the problem is. Chinwe was telling Andy that there's something about Dan that is so awful. In fact, she's terrified looking at Dan. And then she went ahead to ask Andy, "How long have you known Dan? And that mark in his hand, how long has that mark been on his hand?" And Andy went ahead to tell Chinwe that mark has been there since he got to know Dan. Wow. So which means that Dan is really the one that did the evil to Chinwe. But then Chinwe could not really tell Andy what really happened because she cannot really remember if it is actually Dan. At this point, she cannot actually put herself together to know exactly what Dan did. But then Andy kept on telling Chinwe not to worry, that maybe it's because of what is happening. But Chinwe kept on insisting that she know what she's saying, that Dan is behind something that she cannot really fathom, but she'll get to find out this whole thing. But then Munachi cannot eat. Her mind is where the husband is. She just lost her child. But then Rita is always there to console Munachi. Rita was discussing with Munachi, and then Munachi was telling Rita that he has already ordered Andy and Dan to look for somebody to come and buy this house, that she's ready to sell this house, anything that will bring back the husband to her. But then the question is AGK going to understand that she actually did it for him? But Munachi does not even care. She doesn't even care about anything. She just wants to do what she wants to do to bring back the husband. At this point, I know fully well that Dan is going to be the one buying the house. He is a very wicked and evil friend. He wants to throw AGK to the street and then own his house again. On the next episode, we are going to find out if Dan is actually going to be the one buying this house. If you have not liked the video, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. I'll bring the next episode to you as soon as it drops. But for now, take care.